All right, good morning, everybody. Good evening, good day, wherever you are in the world. It is very early in the morning here in Seattle, but welcome to this Ask the Experts session for the session Stop Attacks and Reduce Security Operations Workload by 50% with Automated Cross-Domain Security. So hopefully many of you here enrolled and dialed in today were able to view this session about 15 minutes ago. And we are very fortunate to have a team of experts here, literally from around the world. We've got members of our engineering team and business team here from Canada, from Dubai, and from Israel. So a very global team here today to help answer your questions. So just before we get started, just a few little pieces of housekeeping. Please dial or type your questions into the chat. Questions will appear to everybody, and if you see one there that you agree with or you have the same question, please use the like button. That will push it to the top of the list and we will answer those ones first. My name is Tim Wolford. I'm a product marketing manager and I look after the Microsoft 365 Defender product specifically, so I'll be moderating the call today. I'll be grabbing the questions here for you and reading them out so everyone can hear them, and then assigning them to one of the experts on our panel. The session may well be recorded, so please help me, help our experts. Please don't spam the post or post anything inappropriate, and please always stick to the Microsoft Ignite Code of Conduct. Now that you've had a chance to read that, let me introduce you to our panel of experts. So we have Mr. Jeff Chin, who's a senior technical specialist here from Canada. We have Karina, who you will all have just seen in the presentation a few minutes ago. We also have Milad, who is also in the presentation interviewing the folk from Rabobank. We have Raviv Tamir, who is our partner group program manager looking after this product, and also Tali Ash, who you may well have seen from our session on advanced hunting using Microsoft 365 Defender. So without further ado, just while some of these questions start to roll in, and please start to type these questions into the chat now. But Karina, maybe I can ask you just to spend a few minutes just recapping a very high level, just for a few minutes, what the Microsoft 365 Defender solution is, what it does, and how it fits into our big portfolio of threat protection.
Sure, Tim. For those of you who listened to the talk, but this might be a recap of the overview, but just to set the stage, we have been talking about Microsoft 365 Defender, which is our unified Microsoft 365 security suite that we have started probably about a year ago, and it's actually part of our XDR solution, which is now named Microsoft Defender. The XDR solution, our XDR solution, just starting from the top, comprises of capabilities for securing different aspects of your environment, including identities, devices, data infrastructure, apps, and network. And it's comprised actually of two main products, or two main capabilities. Your Microsoft 365 Defender that we will be talking about today, which is the unified solution for the Microsoft 365 environment. And on the other hand, Azure Defender, which is the equivalent solution for your cloud assets. So this is our combined XDR solution from Microsoft. And specifically, if we drill into Microsoft 365 Defender, this is really we took our best of breed products from the Microsoft 365 group of products, and traditionally these products were operating each in its own area, each separately, each with its own portal and its own capabilities. Just to recap which products we are talking about, Microsoft Defender for Identity, which was formerly known as Azure Advanced Threat Protection, is our solution for securing identities in the organization, looking for or searching for credential theft, compromised user accounts, lateral movement, and those types of malicious activities. Then for the endpoints, we have Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which was formerly known as Microsoft Defender ATP. This is the full stack solution for securing your endpoints, including prevention, detection, remediation, response. Then for your cloud applications, we have Microsoft Cloud App Security, MCAS, and finally for securing user data such as email and SharePoint documents and OneDrive, we have Microsoft Defender for Office 365, which was formerly named Microsoft Office 365 ATP. So each of these products is a best of breed product on its own, quite valued and provides a lot of capabilities in its own domain. But we actually realized that when you look at attacks and how attackers operate, these attacks actually cross boundaries, cross these domain boundaries, and one attack will flow between email, endpoints, touching identities, and often also travel to the cloud. So because this is how attacks look like, we believe that defenders should have a comprehensive view of this combined set of domains, and that's how we basically are, or that's why we are taking these siloed solutions and bringing them together into a coordinated cross-domain full security stack. And this is what Microsoft 365 Defender is, really a set of features that brings together these individual products, integrates them at a deep level, and lets them work together to provide a full security solution with a single interface, single portal, and combined capabilities.
That's awesome. Thanks, Karina, for walking us through that summary. We do have some questions coming in, and the first one here that's come to the top of the list. Jeff, I'm going to ask this one of you. Is Defender alone enough for endpoint protection, or do you recommend complementing it with other point protection products as well? And I'm going to combine that with another question, which is when you start with Microsoft 365 Defender implementation, which point solution or which part of it would you recommend implementing first?
So one of the things that we've seen a lot of customers do is, as they're taking a look at their existing AV suite, it's really about an analysis first of what the true needs are. If you're starting first with the aspects of AV, then absolutely, industry tests show that we're doing extremely well in terms of how we process and look at malware, whether it be do straight signature-based or machine learning-based detections. So I would say from an AV perspective, absolutely. Not only will you benefit from having an AV that is highly performant, but it's also one that's very easy to service. And most importantly, it's also one that integrates well and shares those signals across everything else that you do within Microsoft. The other, if you take a look at the stack overall, although I can't say, I can say sort of with bias that I would probably start with the EDR, with the Defender 365 for endpoints. But I say that often because what that really allows you to do is it allows you to touch a vast amount of the population inside your environment. Mostly in the case of a lot of work from home scenarios now with COVID, you can really deploy Defender 365 for endpoints on any asset. It doesn't matter what OS it's running. It doesn't matter if it's even joined to the traditional domain. If it's cloud joined through something like Autopilot, the visibility and context and the options to be able to perform remediations is vast. And for many folks today who have not experienced or even started to look in EDR, the quality and performance of the sensor being built into the OS and not having an additional requirement to be able to have to update it because it updates normally through just Windows updates. That makes a huge difference. So the complexity is low, the performance is high, and the quality information and how we manifest it and how it feeds the rest of the stack is very beneficial. We've been with customers who have deployed many endpoints, 20, 30,000 plus endpoints in less than 48 hours. So take the time to analyze your risks, but in my opinion, in my experience, those are the two that customers absolutely go after first. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they don't have these tools in place and they want access to that rich telemetry without heavy uplift. And that's what we see in general.
Great, thanks, Jeff. The next question we have, Tali, you've already put a little bit of context here, so I'll just maybe ask you to elaborate. Does the new Defender support mobiles or bring your own device? And obviously very topical for people given what Jeff just said with everyone working from home in a very remote workforce with a lot of new devices accessing corporate data on all kinds of networks. So Tali, maybe you can add a little bit more context to that question.
Yes, hi team and hi everyone. Microsoft Defender for Endpoint supports not only Windows desktops, but also mobile devices. We already support Android, and this solution is compatible with the Android system, and iOS will be supported very soon. So it is not Windows only, and it's not desktop only. It's both desktop servers and mobiles.
Great, so very comprehensive there. Raviv, a question for you. We've had a comment that it's great to see the consolidation of all the security dashboards and their scope of coverage all coming into the single pane of glass. Which dashboard exactly are they consolidating into?
So currently the dashboard as it is, if you go to it, it's available for everyone under http security.microsoft.com. What you'll see there today is 3 experiences which we highlighted if you've seen the session. One is incidents that's consolidating alerts and other signals across all these products. The second one is hunting, which exposes raw data that we collect and we prime for hunting across these 4 products. And the third one is automation, which today works across Office and across endpoints. In the next couple of weeks to a couple of months, you actually see us moving beyond that and consolidating the entire endpoint portal that exists today. If you're using it, securitycenter.windows.com, and the Office portal, protection.office.com. Both of those are consolidating into security.microsoft.com, which will include all their functionality under there. Immediately after that, it will also roll up what's currently called Microsoft Defender for Identity, and formerly was Azure Advanced Threat Protection. So that will also roll up into that same portal. The one product out of the list here that is still awaiting in the queue is Microsoft Cloud App Security, where today we're already consolidating content from that portal, but the actual portal itself, it will take us time to figure out how to consolidate it, mainly because Microsoft Cloud App Security is a lot of things. It's not just a pure M365 security solution, also deals with compliance and other scenarios. So that one is a bit more tricky, but it's coming.
Great, thanks, Raviv. Milad, one here for you. What limitations exist if you were not using Azure Sentinel, or maybe if you were using a different SIEM, or if you weren't using a SIEM at all? And maybe just give a little context as well on maybe why you would use a SIEM, or what that sort of relationship is between SIEM and XDR.
Absolutely. So if I think about Azure Sentinel is our cloud-native SIEM and SOAR solution. And the purpose of a SIEM and or a SOAR solution is not only connecting one particular product and the analyzing the log files and so on, right? It's about connecting all the different products that you have in your security organization and bringing them together under one roof, right? So that remains for us being Azure Sentinel. The way Microsoft 365 Defender plays into it is making sure that we provide, from a Microsoft 365 perspective, all the visibility into Azure Sentinel so that it becomes more accessible, easier, and more effective for the SOC to operate, right? So it's not a, are we going to use Azure Sentinel or Microsoft 365 Defender conversation? It's about complementing each other, right? And then, of course, because you touched also Splunk in there, from a Microsoft 365 Defender perspective, of course, we will provide supportability through APIs and integrations with also third-party SIEMs that are out there. But of course, from a Microsoft standpoint, then we will provide the best possible experience when it comes to our SIEM, which is Azure Sentinel.
Awesome, thanks, Milad. Another question we have come in, maybe Karina, we go back to you. The comment is, I'd like the idea about having AIR triggered by a user reporting phishing via the report message add-in. However, to have this manually approved without having to log in to the portal, is that possible?
Without having to log into the portal, that's interesting. So first I would say that our automation is actually, we intend it to get to a point where most of the time it can operate fully automatically. This is how you get the best efficiency gains by allowing it to do the work, at least in many of the cases, and completely self-heal, basically alerts or malicious activities. In cases where you set it to be to require approval, that's certainly possible, and it works like that today. You have the ability to approve, for example, actions taken when phishing URLs are detected. I'm not sure about the so there are APIs as well available, and so I think if you wanted to tie it into some flow that uses email or some kind of mobile thing, you could do that as well with just integrating APIs.
Great, thank you. Raviv, one for you. Tell us about the difference between Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, specifically around mobile and Intune.
Sorry, what was the question?
Can you tell us about the difference between Intune and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, specifically around mobile?
So Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is an extension of the endpoint protection product that we built that applies for mobile devices. Which today we're in various stages of releasing it and various stages of previews, but we'll cover all modern mobile devices, including iOS and Android. And it essentially, it's a client and a sensor the same way, working at the same way with the same level of signal like we do on non-mobile devices. So essentially, it's an extension of that. Intune, in that sense, is one of the tools we are working with to manage those devices. So it's kind of a separation between the management layer of the devices versus the actual capabilities of the devices, which are primed for security purposes.
That makes sense, thank you. And Milad, excuse me, Milad, one for you. When implementing Microsoft Defender for Endpoint specifically, do you have any best practices or special points of attention when you're implementing that platform?
Yes, so we recently published a deployment guide for Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. And that one covers beyond also just the technology, also like on the operational side on how to get started with this project, right? It covers also based on our experience helping customers deploy the solution, the priority order for the individual components of Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So that's definitely something I would recommend looking after, right? To kind of piggyback to what Jeff was saying earlier, it also factors in like the situation of the customer, what components are covered today by another solution, and so on, right? So if a customer is looking to jumpstart because they need to replace their current antivirus solution, then definitely like, they can start with the AV. If they're looking because they haven't yet had an EDR solution, it's definitely a quick win, particularly when you're on Windows 10, because there's no agent required, so you just enable the sensor, right? So I definitely would recommend taking a look at the deployment guide that is on docs.microsoft.com for Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, because it covers all these aspects and it helps you navigate through your deployment journey.
Thanks, Milad. Karina, sorry, I'm going to pick on you again just because I saw you answering this question in the chat. But we had a couple of questions around safe docs. Specifically, it would be great if it could be configured based on users, groups, or domains. At the moment, we can only enable or disable for the entire tenant. Are there any plans to change this? And maybe you could just give some context or elaborate on your answer there a little bit.
Yeah, I was just saying, I assume that by safe docs, we mean the Defender for Office safe links and safe attachments feature. Certainly that's generally a concept across Microsoft 365 Defender that we plan to address is the ability to define different groups of assets, whether they're devices or users, and be able to apply different policies. And this is already operating this way on the Defender for Endpoint side, and I can certainly see us expanding that concept across the suite.
Thanks. And Tali or Raviv, a question around Microsoft 365 Defender and sort of privacy and I guess data sovereignty. Does Microsoft 365 Defender or one of the underlying platforms take a copy of suspicious files for analysis? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about data privacy behind the scenes there.
So the answer to that question is it depends. It depends on the setup of the system. And I think these controls still vary a bit between what we do on endpoint and what we do, for instance, over email. In the realm where I feel more safe to be determined is on the endpoint side. The default is that we do not collect files. We collect metadata about the files, which means that we will analyze the file using the client where at the location where it's at, and all our detections are based on either decisions that we make locally or metadata of the file itself, which should not include its content, which we evaluate via the cloud. There are some setups, for instance, for the AV, where you can ask to be more aggressive and ask us to actually pull files of different sorts or different sizes into the cloud in real time to be more aggressive for files that we don't know. But those policies are controlled by the customers and not by us. And like I said, the default is not to do that. What happens on the email side, and here it's like, I apologize in advance, I am a little rusty on that, but essentially the mail is scanned. Only files that are deemed malicious, which means that, let's say, our detection harness was able to implicate them as being 100% identified as malicious, are then being picked by Microsoft, and they're being stored in our kind of central malicious file repository, and data about this file is shared across all products. So with the intent that since we've identified positively that this file is malicious, actually want all these products to block, and not just the mail product, but actually also I want the AV, endpoint. I want all these files to be aware of this, all these products to be aware of the file and block it. So the answer is it depends, right? It's configurable.
Makes sense. Thank you, Raviv. Tali, another question for you. Does web content filtering work, or is it enabled across all platforms? And I assume that could be all platforms as in all siloed solutions, or maybe all platforms as in operating systems or device platforms as well. But the question is does web content filtering work across all platforms?
Tim, I will share a link for documentation on web content filtering, where you will be able to find all the solutions. I don't remember out of my head which platforms exactly this specific feature support. So I will just paste it in the chat.
Perfect, thank you. And it looks like I'm just filtering here through the list of published questions. It looks like we may have tackled all of these now. So please, in the last couple of minutes, if you do have any final questions, please type them into the chat here so our panel of experts can tackle those. I'm hoping there's not any here that I have missed. Jeff, I see you've returned to us. Just one really quick question. I notice you did respond to this in the text, but will all Microsoft 365 Defender's features be identical in both the full M365 E5 suite and the E5 security add-on?
Yeah, so from a licensing perspective, the main difference between the full M365 suite and the ones that we're talking about today, which is Defender for Identity, Defender for Endpoint, Microsoft Cloud Security, and Defender for Office 365, those are all bundled in. So the security SKU specifically is to deal with the technologies that are listed here. So the answer is yes, you will have the similar capabilities across the entire stack, whether or not you decide to do the security SKU or simply just the full E5. Of course, there are benefits later on that have a ton, if you're going down the journey of compliance, there are additional features that roll in there. But under the context of what we want to talk about here today, specifically with Defender 365, the answer is yes. Buying either will give you the features that you've been sort of going through during Ignite this week.
Thanks, Jeff. And I think we have time for one more. Milad, I'll pick on you for this last one. And it looks like the question may have just been moved. Let me see if I can chase that. Raviv asked for more, yeah. Looks like Raviv asked for more clarification there, but manual blocking, is it recommended in Defender, and does it have a performance penalty?
Manual blocking. So I think I would echo on Raviv to get more clarity, insights on the question. Like, okay. Is it related to a custom detection, for example, that they are creating and then they want to perform response actions for it? Like a bit more information about what manual response would mean. The product itself has response actions, but having more insights on this specific use case would be beneficial.
And I think if I were to make an assumption, maybe it would be, rather than automated remediation, if it was like something that had to be triggered or manually, it would have like a human confirm that it was okay. Is there a performance penalty to doing that? Does it slow things down? Or is it part of organizational policy that a certain remediation might have to be triggered by a human?
So gotcha. Maybe the good chance for Tali to say something about like custom detection and how they relate to actions.
Yes, sure. So in advanced hunting, you have the feature of creating a custom detection rule, which is a rule that will run according to a query you define in advanced hunting. If you would like to make sure you will get alerted anytime there is a result from this query, you can build a detection rule for that. When you're configuring a custom detection rule, first you need to create the query, to give a rule a name, to give the alert title, description, and more information on the metadata of the rule and the alert that you would like to configure. And you also have the option to configure automatically remediation actions that will be applied once an alert is being triggered. The remediation actions that you can configure on the rule depends on the assets that you configured in your query. For example, if in your query you're having both user and device, the remediation action that you can configure for these specific rules will be remediation actions on a device, on files, and on the user. And it's very important to remember that once you're configuring remediation actions on a custom detection rules, those actions will be taken automatically every time an alert is triggered. So this is one way to automate your remediation actions on specific alerts.
Thank you, Tali. And we are right at time. So the links here on the screen to the Virtual Hub where you can find a lot more content. There's also our brand new Microsoft 365 Defender webpage and also the overall security blog where you'll find all the new information and announcements. So thank you for dialing in. Thank you very, very much to our team of experts around the world. We hope you found this useful and please enjoy the rest of your Ignite. Thank you very much.